You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
Big question for tonight's game in Seattle. Will Mitch Marner and Anthony Stolarz return to the Maple Leafs lineup? Brought to you by Bet365. It's the Thursday edition of Leafs Morning Take. I lost my train of thought. I was so excited for the game. It's Nick Alberga, Jay Rosehill. How we feeling, Rosie?
It happens, Nicky. Yeah, I would expect Mitchie boy to come in. The big story to me is whether Stoley comes back, and do they want him to play before the break? Is that a necessity, or is that something they're hesitant about? I guess we're going to find out shortly.
Yeah, my question is, like, why ramping up activity if you're not going to get him in a game before the Four Nations? But I guess ultimately it will come down to Stolarz, how he's feeling, and the coaching staff. But I think it is time. We'll see if it does happen here. Unfortunately, as mentioned on the show the other day, the games are later, which means the skates happen later and post-production here on this show. But again, at the Leafs Nation 401 for every information note you will need in your life following the Toronto Maple Leafs. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION, all in uppercase today. That's NATION, NATION. Our Super Chat charity partner this season is Sick Kids. Want to make sure that your question or comment gets on the show. Hit us up with a Super Chat. Proceeds from our Super Chat will go to Sick Kids, ranked the #1 research-intensive children's hospital in Canada and third in the world. First and foremost, Rosie, how was the game the other night in Calgary?
It was solid. Yeah, it was a fun game. But my little man, I think it was his second
Nice.
game. We don't get out too terribly often, but my brother was going, so I grabbed some tickets and went and watched. And it was a good game, man. Like, first 2 goals disallowed, but it's the back and forth with the Calgary fans, Leafs fans. Go Leafs, go Flames, go, trying to drown each other out. And I got my little guy down by the glass for a warm up, and I looked across, and it was like jam packed all the way up to like the mezzanine level there where the boxes are, with Leafs fans with signs, and like couldn't see a seat. It's crazy for a warm up, and it just reminded you what this team is to to the league, and to how big its fan base is and its following, and how that Maple Leaf travels so well. And it was literally, even in Calgary, where they've got a pretty passionate Calgary Flames fan base, it was getting drowned out by the Maple Leafs fans. It's just awesome.
I was very disappointed to see Mitch Marner not play the other night. I would have loved if Marner came into that game, racked up like a 4-point night. You knew he would in that type of setting against the Calgary Flames. We didn't see that, but you got yourself a pretty damn good hockey game with offense, man. Like, if you were to look at some of the games the Leafs have played this season and just boring the hell out of all of us, low event hockey, that wasn't the case in Calgary. So you nailed it Tuesday night.
Yeah, there was lots of back and forth, man. I thought really solid from the Leafs right off the bat. The Flames kind of controlled the play for the first little bit, some big chances. They couldn't quite hit the net. And I'm like, boys, figure it out. But other than that, aside from the 2 5-on-3 chances that they gave up, which is pretty difficult this day and age to defend that for I think it was a minute 45 of the one. And they buried on both of them, which is somewhat understandable. But other than that, pretty in control of the game. The big boys took over. Johnny T looked good. Nylander, obviously phenomenal. Man, that guy can shoot. And yeah, I was right after. I was on Barn Burner the same day, I think. Talking about the game, was talking about Bobby McMahon somehow, about his release and his shot. And that was right in front of us. I looked at my brother saying, what did I tell you about that Wainwright, Alberta release? It was impressive. So it was nice to see him get on the board in a good way. That wasn't, a 3-2 win where they're barely holding on. It was pretty decisive.
Leafs insider Jay Rosehill right there bringing the heat. But Bob McMahon's been a great story. We talked about this on the show yesterday, but 76% of the goals this season have come from 6 players. Bob McMahon involved in that conversation. Now 16 tucks, a career high. Insane value on that front. Speaking of value, Rosie, the Maple Leafs yesterday linked via Kevin Weeks to the Buffalo Sabres and Dylan Cousins. By the way, did you see how Buffalo responded? So they come out the first shift after they didn't respond to the Tage Thompson hit, and it's like, okay, Dennis Gilbert drops the gloves with a guy, and the toughest guy in the league, and Matthew Olivier. It's got no bearing on the previous game at all. I just thought it was hilarious. They're pissed off in Buffalo, at least the media are and the fans.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Buffalo just seems to have their struggles, but
every year.
every year. It's funny how they can't quite get off the ground, hey? And how long has it been since they've been in the playoffs? It's been a long time.
Like 14 years. Are we allowed to laugh at another team as Leafs fans, considering they've won one playoff series? I think in Buffalo's respect, because they are a rival, I think we can, Rosie.
I think we can do whatever we want, but we might get chirped for it a little bit, rightfully
True.
so. Dylan Cousins, I mean, pretty good player. He hasn't really kind of got up to what he was 2 years ago there with, kind of a breakout year, but again, still very young and lots of potential. Thing is, how would that work with the cap? I think he's at $7.1 million. I think he would be probably a helpful addition. I'm assuming he might enjoy a change of scenery, but got to have something to do with retained value. What are we going to give Buffalo to give up Cousins with lots of term left on his deal and a young talent that could easily turn into a real good player at 7.1 and going to eat a whole bunch of that for us? I know I'm no cap genius and I'm no trade guru, but I don't understand how that would work.
The cap's not the issue this year. If the Leafs could do it. Zach and I put out a video yesterday at the Leafs Nation 401 breaking down this whole scenario. By the way, Montreal, Calgary, Detroit, also the three other teams linked to Dylan Cousins. You got to remember too, like we're late in the season, so it'd be prorated to like how many games are remaining, but there'd have to be money in, money out. And the cap is going up significantly as we've talked about the next 3 years. So look, the Leafs could stomach Dylan Cousins at $7.1 million. But the bigger story for us and for me specifically was like the return. Like what are you giving Buffalo? Like it sounds like they want a guy who can play now. I don't think that team is prepared for another rebuild. They want somebody who can play, is in the lineup right now. So you're looking. Again, you're going to be looking. I don't want to throw names out there because people get pissed off when we do that. But they're looking for something substantial in return. I just don't think the Leafs are a good fit right now.
Yeah, and how high are they on him? 53 games. He got 10 goals this year. So you take one of our 10 goal scorers. I don't think that's going to get it done. He scored 31 a couple of years ago, and he's 23, 24 years old. 23. Big body, 6'3". I just think the potential's through the roof. I'm sure they value him. I'm sure we would too, but who are you giving up? That's our problem right now. We know what we want to add. We know what we want to add, depth at center. We want to get a right-handed defenseman that can play and complement certain people. We want depth scoring, but like, what are you giving up for it, man? I think that's Tree Living's biggest thing right now, trying to beat us against the wall, saying like, it's not even that you don't want to give up stuff necessarily. It's that you don't even have anything to give up. I mean, you're not giving up Matthew Nyes. Bobby McMahon, you're just going to try to replace him, and he's a wicked value on your contract. Like, Nick Robertson doesn't have a lot of value. Max Domi's playing like garbage all year long. Like, who are you giving up here? It comes down to like, our two prospects in Fraser Minton and Easton Cowan, and I just don't know what they're prepared to give up. So that's the tough thing. But you're telling me that we could take on $7.1 million of cap space right now. I know there's only X amount of time left. It's not prorated though. That's what your cap hit is, 7.1.
No, but the cap changes like during the year, right? So let's say you pick up a $5 million player, the cap is like prorated to the amount of games remaining in the year, if that makes sense. Like it's not the total cap hit against the cap. It just depends on how many games are remaining, right?
Well, that's what you got to pay him, but your cap hit is like how much
your
cap
you're talking for the future, yeah.
AAV. Yeah, the future, I know we can handle tons of.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about next year or the year after. I know that we can go get a lot of players. There's going to be room. There's going to be spots available, and we're going to fill them with bodies, and it's exciting. But I'm talking about right here this year for this run. I think it's difficult to get a $7.1 million guy in there and fit it under the cap. I know you got to move money out. Who the hell is that? And I really think you got to have Buffalo retain some of that dollar value, which I don't see why they would be willing to do that. So I don't know. Lots of pipe dreams, lots of throwing stuff against the wall, seeing if it fits. But at the end of the day, there's only one man who's able to make that decision, and maybe two if you want to throw Brendan Shanahan in there. But it's Tree Living trying to figure out how he's going to make this team better. I think everyone's pretty clear on what the deficiencies are and where they'd like to see this team bolster before the playoffs. But getting that done, I think, is another story.
It got my brain exercised, though. What about Brad Marchand? Boston loses again. They lose again. That team is spiraling. And if you're a team that's looking for a retool or rebuild, we thought it was going to happen eventually. I did some digging. Obviously, Marchand's in a contract year. He has an 8-team no trade list. I have no clue if the Maple Leafs are on that list. But you look at a gamer like that, a guy who's just like everything you want and need in a player in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I'm at least making a call. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Oh, I mean, I put a lot of stock in Brad Marchand. I know he's not kind of what he was this year, 36 years old. You can't expect too much, but you go look at his he's got 19 tucks this year, 29 last year, 21, 32, 29, 28, 36, 34, 39, 37. Like he's a clutch performer too. Like that's the biggest thing to me. These guys that people talk about, and it's like, oh, you look at their stat line and they walk around all pretty, but it's like, have you ever like gone to war? Have you ever like drug your team behind you or put them on your shoulders and got them through a playoff series? Like that's what Brad Marchand has done in spades, man. He's been the difference maker for years and years and years. And if that's something Toronto has been lacking with all our guys, with all their points and trophies that don't do, that don't get it done in the playoffs. I mean, that's a name that I absolutely would be thinking could make a difference in a playoff series, which, let's be honest, that's all the Toronto Maple Leafs are looking for, is someone to make a bloody difference in the playoffs.
And I mean, who knows if the Leafs and Bruins could make a deal right now? Obviously, it happened back in the day with like Phil Kessel, but that we're long removed. But I think logically on Boston, there's a couple guys like Marchand. Obviously, if he's available, I'm placing that call. I just think he would be a good fit on any team, any cup contender. Trent Frederick's a name I brought up. Charlie Coyle. Like there are some guys on that roster that would intrigue me. Again, I never know or never will know if Boston would even be open to that kind of ideology. I think they still, the best to I know, they want to make the playoffs. But I did start to salivate a bit thinking about the prospects of Brad Marchand. I've seen the segments out there. The idea is like anything is possible. I think if there's one thing I've learned the last couple of weeks, anything is possible. And I just envisioning Brad Marchand and the Toronto Maple Leafs with this current nucleus, I think would be pretty damn exciting and fun.
It would look weird, wouldn't it? Him
Yeah.
in the blue and white, but you just wonder how it would go. I mean, there'd be
Yeah.
expectations for him to do what he's done in his prime in the playoffs, which is probably not fair. But I do think he's got enough left to give. Obviously didn't go well for him last year, getting injured and kind of took some of his own medicine really in the playoffs. But I imagine that, grit like that and personality like that doesn't just go away because you're a couple years older. I just think the mentality of it, it's, you look at Mitch and you look at Austin, and neither of them really have that. They have similar personalities, I guess, and leadership qualities. They're not bad, but they're not what Brad Marchand has been in his prime, that grit, that leadership, that go through a wall, that absolutely charge the net like a bowling ball and let the chips fall where they may. You want to have something about it. You don't. You take their goalie out. You score it. Like, who knows? But he's just willing to do it all. And I think he's been extremely effective. And lots of people hate him. Why? Because he is so goddamn effective at it. Yeah, he's licked people and done some dumb stuff before. But, I mean, it's all under the guise of he is trying to control the narrative on the ice, and he'll do anything to accomplish that. And I think he's still got a lot to give. So I think that would be, he's not a centerman. I think being at the center position would just be the cherry on top, but it's something to fun to throw around and envision if that could possibly happen.
Yeah, definitely some food for thought. And I love the whole licking part. Yeah, like he's licked people. So what? Like that just, it's part of the DNA of Brad Marchand at this point in time. Rosie, the first ever TLN Nation vacation is just around the corner. We're headed to Nashville Thursday, March 20th to Sunday, March 23rd. In addition to supplying your ticket to the Toronto-Nashville game on the Saturday night, we'll be hosting a live podcast for all of you at Love and Exile Winery and Bar in East Nashville. And yes, a winery tour will be part of the experience, as well as we talked about yesterday with Carter Hutton. We're offering two packages, one with flights, $24.50 plus tax, one without, $12.99 plus tax. Hotel rooms are double occupancy. For more information on how to book, head on over to nationgear.ca. That's nationgear.ca, or check out the link in our show bio. Life's too short for ordinary vacations. Fun little show set up for today. First and foremost, I want to promote tonight's edition of Leafs Nation After Dark with Zach Phillips, so make sure you check that out directly following the Leafs and Kraken game. And speaking of the Kraken, speaking of the Leafs, the former head coach of the Kraken, former assistant of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Dave Hakstol is going to drop by in about 15 here.
Yeah, exactly. Hack's been around a while. I remember him at North Dakota. I'm sure he doesn't, but I flew down there and checked the place out a little bit when he was the assistant, and then he had the reins of that. I mean, that's one of the best college programs there is. You look at their arena, go
Yeah.
on YouTube and look. I think it's like a Chiclet subsidiary does like checks
Mhm.
out college barns and their whole setup, which is something people don't get to see. It's not televised a whole lot. You
True.
don't get that inside access to what the NCAA is like, and that might be more intriguing to some players and kids nowadays as CHL players are now valid to go down and play NCAA and get those scholarships and play that style of hockey. But you go check out Ralph Engelstad. It's fucking, it blows the doors off most NHL setups as far as the facilities, which is just hard to fathom. And he was there for a long time. He popped into Toronto when I was there to kind of check out the coaching situation when I think he was thinking about dipping his foot into the NHL. And he's been with Maple Leafs, Flyers, and Kraken all over the place. So it'd be good to pick his brain. He's got experience with a lot of guys on this roster, Stolarz included, Morgan Riley, all the guys that he's been around while he was assistant coach here, and he knows those Kraken inside and out too. So interesting guest today for sure.
At the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Again, at the Leafs Nation 401, where you can do so. Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And don't forget to visit the LeafsNation.com. Coming up on Saturday, February 15th, presented by Fountain Tire, the Leafs Nation will be hosting a watch party at Greta Bar on King Street West as Canada and the United States duke it out at the Four Nations. We've got ticket giveaways, signed memorabilia trivia, and t-shirt tosses happening all night long. Join Zach Phillips and me for this 19-plus event as we cheer on Team Canada. Entry is free with a reservation. Doors open at 6 p.m. Puck drop is slated for 8 p.m. Grab your free ticket now at nationgear.ca, Rosie. So it's the Leafs and the Seattle Kraken, game 3 of this 4-game road trip before the Four Nations.
Yes, that is true. And they want to keep this thing going. They swept Alberta, which I thought would be tough to do, but damn, they looked good. They've started well and been on time, and their big boys are doing big boy things. Little disappointed that Max Domi didn't get going. I think he had his shot there on.
It's pretty good, though.
Yeah.
Better.
Was he? It's always hard watching live, man. Like you watch so many games on the TV, and then you look live, and it's like, what would that look like on the TV? It's tough to process, especially when you're. It's just different. It's a totally different look. I love watching live hockey, especially with a decent seat, where you can kind of see everything all at once and choose to look to point where you want to look at. But thought he was average. I really thought Holmberg was fucking horrendous, dude. Like honestly, I know
I saw that tweet.
and people are kind of like, "Wow, you're just figuring it out now." I don't think he's been that bad, but I mean, lost. Every time the puck touched his stick, it blew up and he panicked and just whacked it to nowhere. If he even corralled it, I mean, in that league, you can whip cross ice, tumbling dead ducks to a guy that bounced right before the guy's blades, and these guys pick up those passes. Like you can't give a good player a bad pass in that league, and he couldn't even pick up passes. The puck was bouncing everywhere. He was throwing it into traffic. I thought he was spinning. He was absolutely lost. And I'm thinking there, man, there's a roster spot that just, and I'm talking about if we go deep here, trying to make a run, looking at a championship worthy team, you can't have guys like that. And, people were talking about Steves, to be honest. And if you look like he's leading the American Hockey League right now. He's only 20 something years old. He's only got 11 games. All I know is that everyone's got a hate on for the guy. Are you telling me you don't put Holmberg down after looking at that garbage and seeing what this guy's got? You don't think he can develop and get better? He's leading the American League. He's got like 34 rips in 50 games. Like, why not give this guy a look if you can't score bloody goals and you've got Pontus out there spinning around like he's lost?
Okay, I get that, but in the sample size in his short NHL journey, he's a guy who blends in, man. And you know this better than most people. There are guys who are just really damn good AHLers and they can't figure it out at the NHL level.
Oh, I know. I agree with that. But right now we have exactly what you'd be afraid of if you called up Steves, a guy that does nothing. So why not give something else a try? We're banging our heads trying to talk about where our depth scoring is going to come from and how sustainable is it to only have 6 guys score 78% of our goals. And it's not. So when Pontus is doing nothing, you can send him down for nothing, bring up Steves for nothing, and just have a different look at it. Maybe this kid's found something. I mean, players develop like that. How old is Steves? He's not like he's 32 years old and you know what you're getting. You can get better. Guys blow up. You talk about the Tanev brothers, for example, which we'll talk about with Hakstol coming up, as he knows, the
Brandon.
Brandon, pretty good from Seattle. Both those guys are undrafted players. Like, how have they both come up? Because they've developed and they got better before anyone really noticed, and after the draft. And these guys can get better at hockey and become things that you didn't think they were later on in life. And this Steves isn't even like he's 30 years old. I mean, people were banging on that drum on Twitter after I tweeted about Pontus, and I was like, dude, why not? Like, what do you have to lose? Pontus hasn't done anything in so
Yeah.
long, and he's looking worse and worse. Why not give a guy a shot who's lighting it up offensively in the American League and is within your system?
So he's got 25 goals in 34 games so far here for the Marlies. And I think the counter, I think, would be that Pontus Holmberg is reliable defensively. I agree. He brings nothing to the table offensively. Steve's not known for, I think, his defensive acumen, but still like a relatively good player. Like, obviously, he's a top guy in the AHL. But as you know, more than most people, again, coaches have favorites. Clearly, there was something they saw in Alex Steves that was like, no, I don't think so. Or, Alex Nylander was playing games. But I think it's a fair point. He's 25. I mean, you don't have to look very far to look at players of that realm who suddenly got to the NHL and figured it out and had a track record of scoring in the AHL, and that's Bob McMahon. Like, this story has been so fun to document. We talked about this yesterday. Scotty Bowman randomly brought up that he had met Bob McMahon due to a family friend back in the day, but he has been such an amazing story. And that's sort of what intrigues me with a guy like Steves is like Bob McMahon. It happened to him. Why can't it happen to Steves at the NHL level?
Well, yeah, and I mean, if you're in the American League and you're doing what he's doing back there, and you're scoring a ton of goals, and you're doing what you're asked, and you look up at the big club and they're struggling for depth scoring, and they don't know where their offense is going to come from if it's not one of the big handful of guys, and that's a problem, and they're pulling their hair out trying to figure out who can we trade to get some, and you're sitting there lighting up the American League offensively. It would be a frustrating thing. You'd sit there and go, they haven't given me a shot. I played 11 games for the
Yeah.
organization, and I was averaging how many minutes and playing with who? Revo? Like, I don't think you've given the guy a chance. And he's clearly gotten better, and he's gone down there with the right attitude and worked on his game and got better. And I think he'd be screaming, going, give me a shot. You need exactly this. And I'm providing it. I'm not saying it will work. I'm not saying he's the answer. But like, what the hell do you got to lose? Oh, because he's not as defensively responsible as Pontus. Well, that's not our problem right now. Pontus isn't holding the wheels on the defense of this roster.
Yeah.
We need something else. And I mean, at this point in time, this is just sit around and wait for the playoffs and wait for the trade deadline. Give him a shot, man. After this Four Nations, give him 5 games and say, hey, here's your shot, kid. Sometimes opportunity is all you need to pop off, like a Bobby McMahon has. He got the opportunity and he seized it, but you're never going to get to show that if you don't get the opportunities. And I don't know, right now with what I saw from Pontus, that's the only reason I'm banging this drum right now. And I was just like, good Lord, like you could literally put him down for anybody just to try it. I mean, there's no hurt, no harm in trying a guy out.
And I think additionally to your point, you call up a Steves, you're so right. You can't like I always like sort of laugh like even Jacob Quillen makes his debut last week. Like, here you go, you're playing with Ryan Reeves. Like, again, with due respect to Revo, a guy like Steves who's coming from the AHL, who's putting up goals and putting up points, you almost are inclined to try him in the top 6. I mean, they've been looking for a top 6 winger, since Bertuzzi left, pretty much. Like, why not give that a shot? I think you can have a better understanding of the player at the NHL level. You put him with the best players.
Yeah, or at least on that third line, like with a McMahon or a Domi or Robertson or whoever, like just with guys that kind of have that mentality. Yeah, if you get called up from the American League, you're going to have to work your bag off. You're going to have to get it deep. You're going to have to forecheck. You're going to have to finish your hits and stuff like that. But, on that third line as opposed to the fourth, you might have a guy that can make a play. You get some space. You can do something with it. You can try and create. You can get some things going off the cycle. That's what the opportunity would be. I know so many guys in the American League come up and get 5 minutes playing with me or Revo, and it's like you didn't really give the guy a shot to see what he's got. You see bagels across the board. Well, what do you expect, right? So I would like it to be something with a little bit more opportunity like that. But I mean, we know what the problems are on this team, and we know what happens when Willie Nylander doesn't do what he did in Calgary. All of a sudden, it's like, how are we supposed to win? And if you're looking for that depth and you're having trouble getting trade partners and you don't have anything to offer, well, Christ, like use what you have. And at the time where Yarncroke is still injured and you don't know what he's going to be, now's the time. Get him in there. I mean, Domi's playing on the first line the other night, for crying out loud. There's room to get this guy in the lineup and see, all right, buddy, you're lighting the tits off the American League. Let's see what you got. This is what we're looking for. Here's a 5-game slate. See what you can do. And if he's just what you thought he was and he doesn't even get noticed out there and he's not an NHL player, well, now you know. And you can switch whatever you want to do after that. But I think it's worth a look.
Maybe he's going to be used as trade capital too.
Yeah, shit, maybe. I
I,
imagine there's a lot of
I
teams in the a lot of teams in the National League right now who've got a guy like that in their farm system. He's on
yeah.
the big club all day.
Well, it's like even talking to people, they really want Marshall Rafai to play an NHL game like that. And it just speaks to Leafs Nation, right? Like we just value our players higher than they are. And, Nick Robertson's a perfect example. Like I still feel like they could benefit from adding 2 bottom 6 forwards. Maybe you include Calle Yarncroke as a bottom 6 pickup. They need at least one more. It's just not cutting it. And like you saw it in person, I was going to ask you too. And Carter Hutton got all National League yesterday. Did you wear a hat to the game on Tuesday?
No, I didn't.
Because I was like, Jay Rosehill, if he was wearing a hat, I think he's a guy who would throw his hat. Would you have thrown your hat if you had a hat?
No, I wouldn't have. If I'm wearing a hat to an NHL game and I like the hat, I'm just winging it. I'm always impressed by people. Like hats are like $40 these days. Winging the thing just for the sake of having a fun. Like hell, I love it. I love how people do it. But man, don't you like that hat? Isn't that why you're wearing it?
Yeah, I guess it's showing support for a team, but that's a
Yeah,
good way
I
to
like
put it and frame it. But Hut's got so National League. He's like, I'd never think about doing that. I'm like, oh, sorry, penny pretentious. Like it's
it.
ridiculous to me. Like I think support your team. I get it though. Like they are expensive these days. Inflation, am I right? Inflation.
Inflation's happening. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I love and respect the fact that people chuck them. It's fun. It looks awesome. It's one of the really cool things about hockey that they don't really have. Name another sport where you do cool stuff like that. It's neat. But I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I don't wear hats a whole lot. And if I did, it's probably a nice hat if I'm wearing it to the National League game and to say bye-bye for it just to see it fly through the air. I don't know. Good on people that do it, but I probably wouldn't either. Sorry if that's big time. I don't know.
Zach Phillips in the chat. I'm late, but I'm here. What did I miss? Well, I'm about to ask Rosie a question from AK here in the chat. Did you boo the anthem, Rosie, or what?
They didn't play the American anthem. It was
No, boo the
Flames versus-
Canadian anthem, you idiot.
Why would I boo the Canadian anthem?
Why not? You seem like a guy who'd boo it.
No, I don't think any. The story was the Canadians in Ottawa were booing the American anthem because of the tariff threats, which, okay, fine. But then people were asking me on Twitter, did you boo the anthem? I'm like, they're 2 Canadian teams, you meatheads. You don't boo 2. There's no American anthem to boo, but no, I would never boo an anthem anyways. I think I think that's stupid and pointless and just makes your home city crowd fans organization look like garbage.
Is it time to get rid of anthems altogether?
No, I don't know. No, it's kind of you stand up and you have respect for the country that you're in. If you're proud of it, fuck, everyone's so globalist now. Oh my God, the borders. Like, fuck, be proud of where you're from. You're from a country. You moved to a country. You're born in a country. Your parents, grandparents emigrated, whatever it is. If you're happy to be here and you appreciate it and people went to war and died for it, stand up and stand on your feet for 1.5 minutes, for crying out loud. I think it's a good tradition. What the hell's wrong with it? What do you do? Just drop the puck really quick? I don't know. It's a little ceremony of, all right, we're about to play this hockey game. Let's stand up, do this thing, and then away we go. I like it.
Zach writes in, they cheered the Canadian anthem in San Jose. I don't know. I'd play the anthem for like big games, game 1 of the season, the Stanley Cup playoffs. I just start the game. Start the game. 7:00 hits. Just start the game. People got things to do, man. I just hate waiting. And then you got like the prime broadcast, like 15 minutes of pregame. Like, screw that shit. Just start the game.
Well, the pregame stuff, yeah, it's a different story. I don't mind the anthem as a player. You're either on the ice or you're on the bench, and it's kind of a, whew, okay, baby, like, let's focus up, hit the smelling salts, Zachy boy, no stranger to that, and get yourself primed for, as soon as that thing's over, everyone claps and gets organized, and then, whoo, last little stretch, time to drop the puck. I like it. It's a little routine. Nothing wrong with it at all. And the Star Spangled Banner, what a banger, too. I like that.
Good,
That's
too.
probably the best anthem. Ours is whatever. It's okay, but the Star Spangled Banner is such a sick.
You know what got me cooking a couple years ago? They decided to change the lyrics of "Oh Canada." I'm like, I can't do this. I can't fucking do this, man. Like my whole life, I've just been taught to sing this song a proper way, and now you're telling me there's new lyrics to "Oh Canada." Couldn't do it, Rosie. Could not do it.
Inclusive. You got to be inclusive, there, Nicky boy. Yeah, whatever. There's more than women. There's more than men helping out these days. Back in the day, only men went to war, which
Yeah.
isn't that not very inclusive? Why only men go to war? No one's bitching about that, hey. But moving on.
Yes, we're trying to connect here with Dave Hakstol, but Mitch Marner, they talked and pretty much said it was a good possibility that Marner comes back tonight. What's your level of concern? Obviously, with him missing a game, it sounds like he blocked a shot against Edmonton.
Oh, Muffin. Zero concern with that. It's a maintenance day. He's one of the big boys. He plays a ton. He's got a lot on his shoulders. If he's feeling a little creaky at this point in the year or whatever's bugging him, hell, take a night off. It's not like basketball players where they're, what do they call it again? Load management. I don't think it's necessarily that, but when you're at Mitch's level, if you're like, man, it seems like a quick turnaround here. I don't think a guy needs to grind through something that's bugging them, and I think that's all it is. Take that day off. You get an extra 2 days off, and then get prepped up to get ready for that game afterwards. It's kind of a maintenance day type of thing. Doesn't bother me. I'm not concerned about it at all. But again, we have been fooled before by this organization regarding injuries of their stars.
Yeah, that's a thing too, right? Is like they say day to day, but it never really works out
He
that
might go on
way.
IR tomorrow for all we know.
Well, I mean, Four Nations is coming up, man. There's some grave concern in this country. Sidney Crosby, upper body injury, Marner banged up. This tournament's got to come quickly. I mean, they practice on Monday, and the first game's next Wednesday, Rosie.
I didn't hear about Sid. He's got an upper body injury.
Yeah, got banged up the other night.
There's no way Sid doesn't want to play in this thing. He will play. He's one of the guys who's probably looking forward to it. When you get to the twilight of your career, you start to think about, like, he's made his money. He knows what his impact on the game is. He knows what his legacy will be. He's a Hall of Famer guaranteed. He's won the cups and the gold medals and the everything. Like, he knows now. It's just like, all right, man, how many more days of this do I have? Soak it up all you can. There's going to be a lot of lasts. Last time I'm going to do this and that and the other thing, and it's going to be something like this. Like, depending on how often they do this tournament and how it goes, you don't know how many times Sid's going to slide on the Canadian jersey. And obviously he's the golden child of Canadian hockey. So I think he's going to do everything he can, but I can't say that's the situation for every guy in this tournament. Putting it in that mindset like Sid would be, but I almost guarantee Sid is very much looking forward to this tournament.
Yeah, just we haven't no clue what's going on, but like if we're robbed of this again, like we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for the chance to see McDavid, Crosby, McKinnon, like all these guns played together. It feels like it's been an eternity, man.
It's going to be fun, man. Like, I watch more hockey now than I probably ever have. Again, when I played, I didn't watch a ton, probably should have. Growing up, didn't sit down and watch games one after another. I liked highlights. I liked the Rock'em Sock'ems. I liked NHL cool shots, that type of thing. But I didn't just sit there and watch San Jose play Minnesota. Like, you couldn't pay me to do it. It was just too. And if I don't know a bunch of guys on the team and you're used to having so much invested in a hockey game, you know every player individually and personally. Like, you watch 82 of those a year for 15 years. To sit there and watch one on TV that doesn't mean very much to you is not that big of a deal. But to think about that, to think about what is McDavid going to look like? How fast is he going to be? Like, who's he going to play with? Crosby, McKinnon? Who's going to take the wheel out there? Like, will Mitch Marner stand out? It's exciting to see, and I hope it lives up to the hype. If you put it on a pedestal in your mind, I hope it doesn't disappoint, because I am curious to how hard and how intense these guys are going to go when it's not a gold medal on the line. You know, it is different. It's something that's made up that no one's ever won before. So how much pedigree does it have? I guess we're going to find out based on the players' effort level and their commitment to playing hockey at the highest level that they're capable of, which is pretty damn high.
Yeah, and looking forward to that again. Canada, Sweden next Wednesday. But meantime, the following interview is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. Get custom ring building delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece Program and an unbeatable pricing policy. Charm Diamond Centers is proudly Canadian-owned and operated since 1972 with more than 85 locations across the country through Charm and their sister brands. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com as we bring in one of our favorites here at Leafs Morning Take. It is Dave Hakstol. Hack, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
Hey, doing good, guys. How's it going there?
Doing well. The season's flying by. Like I'm sure you feel the same way where it's like, we look and it's like November and now it's like the Four Nations break already, eh?
Yeah, it's always for me. It's always the lead up. As you get through November, that lead up to Christmas, and then you have the short, quick Christmas break, and the next thing everybody is looking towards is the trade deadline, and obviously this year with the Four Nations break coming up within a couple of games here. I mean, it's quick downhill from here to sprint to the finish.
Mm-hmm. Hack, I always like to talk to guys that have been part of the Maple Leafs organization. You've been in the hockey world for a long time, major program in North Dakota, the Philadelphia Flyers, different organizations, and you spent some years in Toronto as part of the Maple Leafs. Can you shed some light on what's different about that? Maybe what makes it hard to win in that market?
Well, it's hard to win everybody. I mean, and you know that, right? I mean, one team every year wins. I mean, especially you get to this time of year, right? And we're all looking at, how can you improve your team? Everybody, in media wise, looking at the 32 teams and what should they do? What can they do? In Toronto, that's you just take that and multiply it, right? And I got to be honest with you, I don't know how much it affects, especially this current Leafs team. You got a group there they've been through it now. They've got some battle scars. You got a guy leading behind the bench that's gone through it, at every different level. So I got to think this year the noise is a little bit less in terms of the effect of that on this group. But time will tell and will show.
Well, that's the big thing. We have that debate on a daily basis. It's all about the Stanley Cup playoffs, unfortunately. Well, it looks different under Chief. What have you made of the way this team has looked so far this season?
Yeah, just real steady in the way, in the way they're doing things. You see, in terms of their play without the puck, I mean, they're above the play a lot. They're hard, they're difficult to play against defensively. They're a little different, right? Under Kiefer, there was probably a little bit more puck pressure, up ice in certain areas. And to the credit, those teams were good defensive teams as well. This team's just a little more, I guess a little more settled in playing those tight 1-goal games. They look very comfortable doing it. You look at their stats, goals for, goals against, the underlying numbers are all there. It's a group that looks pretty comfortable in the tight games as you get into the last 10 minutes of hockey games. Getting great goaltending from, once they have Stoli back, they've got two guys that they seem like they can rely on. He's got some war wounds, right? He's been through it in terms of injuries and winning. You got Joey Wall coming on and really showing that he can get the job done at this point in time. And seems like those guys have a lot of confidence in him.
Yeah, speaking of Stolia, I played with him probably in like 2016. He was a young kid. All big goalies that they can move have potential at that time, but I didn't realize that he could get to the level where we've seen him play this year. Hopefully, he can pick up where he left off. But what do you think of Stolia with your time in Philadelphia, having him in your organization and what he's developed into?
He's not a guy that I'm going to cheer for harder. Just because of the things that he's been through to get to where he's at today. I'm not going to get into the injury history and some of the things that he had to do to come back from some of those procedures that he went through as a young guy. A lot of times that can just knock you right off course, right? And that can push you the other direction. But it seems like it's added maturity to what Stoli is doing. And that's a huge part as a goaltender, especially a goaltender in the city that he's playing in, right? Just mentally, he's a guy that's earned it. He knows he's done the work. Now you're starting to see the level of play. Is he surprising everybody a little bit with the level of play that he has been able to produce on a consistent basis? Maybe, but I bet he's not surprising himself because he's a good man that's done a lot of work to get himself to this level.
Hack, I wanted to ask you about Morgan Rielly. It's been a very difficult season. We all know that. I think certainly if the Leafs are going to do something substantial this spring, Rielly has to be back to Rielly from a couple of years ago, specifically that series against Tampa. I thought he was awesome. But what was it like working with Morgan Rielly on a daily basis? And when he's at his best, what is he doing properly and correctly?
I know the first thing, like Mo owns it, right? He doesn't try to duck it and hide from things. He doesn't push things off on his teammates and things like that. You know, especially at this point of his career, like I believe there's a real maturity to him. The one thing I'm not going to make a judgment on his offensive game because I haven't watched him closely enough this year. But you know, when the numbers start getting, you know, thrown around in terms of your plus minus, and you got to hear that every day. For me at this point in time, you know, Mo's he's got to address, you know, one or two little things in his game that, you know, he feels he can shift, or, you know, he can improve to a certain degree. Beyond that, block out the noise and go play. When he's playing simple, let's be honest, you like when he's trusting his instincts, using his feet, and, you know, being on the aggressive side of how he plays the game. That's when he's at his best. You know, not overthinking things. Just go out and let his natural instincts and his, you know, his skating ability, his talents, let him go. That helps him defensively, and it makes him, you know, it makes him a real good player offensively as well.
Mm-hmm. Hack, you know, Nylander has been a story this year. He's having a phenomenal year. He's just shooting out the lights, and he seems to be one of the players with the most personality on that team that we can see from the outside anyway. As an assistant coach in Toronto, I think that you get a chance to maybe get to know the guys and rub shoulders and BS a little bit more than you do as a head coach. Did you get a chance to get to know Willie a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, he's so comfortable in who he is, right? He's a unique individual, and he owns it, right? You know, I mean, Willie always fought, especially early in his career, and, you know, some of the contract things and stuff like that. You know, I think he always fought, you know, the persona on the ice that, you know, some nights he wasn't competing as hard as he should, and, you know, there's the way he plays the game. There's nights when, you know, maybe it looks a little bit that way, but this is a guy that when you watch him, some of the things people don't know. I mean, this guy works at his game in behind the scenes. You know, he does extra work before practice, after practice, all the stuff that guys do. I mean, we're not patting him on the back for that, but he works at his game. I think he knows the holes that, you know, that he has, and he's worked to improve them. But the personality that he brings, I think, is awesome for a dressing room. When things are, you know, things get a little hairy, things get maybe there's a little bit of heat coming. Willie's not going to feel any of that. You know what I mean? And he's that guys around him, and that helps the bunch. So I love what he brings, and you know what? Proofs in what he's done in the playoffs. Right? The guy's been a great player in the playoffs, and now you're seeing him do it the entire regular season this year.
Got swagger, that is for sure. And Willie Nylander having an outstanding season for this Maple Leafs team. So obviously you've got connection to the Seattle Kraken team. I wanted to ask about Brandon Tanev. You talked about it off the top. It is deadline season. Seattle just seems like a team that would make a lot of sense to maybe make a trade with if you're the Maple Leafs. But Brandon Tanev, you think he'd be a good fit in Toronto?
Well, it's all about exactly that fit. You know what role is is Chief looking for? Do the Leafs want? You know, Turbo. He's got the nickname in Seattle Turbo for a reason. That's the level that he plays at every night. Ton of passion. He brings pace, tenacity. He's a real good penalty killer, not just because of the pace that he brings, but he's got a good understanding of what it takes to kill within different systems in the league. So, you know, he's a guy that what you see, that's what he brings day in and day out to you know, into a team. So, in terms of the fit, for sure, he's a guy that I think can, you know, go and he can help a lot of teams. You know, only the guys that are there that are, you know, gonna flip the switch and make the deals are gonna know if he's the exact right fit for them. But when he's with when he's with a centerman that fits for him, and in a role that fits for him, he's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Two other guys that a lot of talk has been made, rightfully so, this year, kind of the heartbeat of this team in a lot of ways, with Mitch Marner and John Tavares. You know, whether they re-sign or come back, or their term in Toronto continues on, do you think it's all dependent on what happens in the playoffs this year? Has it boiled down to just that?
Uh, you know, I think that's probably the easy view of it. And they're both in different situations, right? Like JT is, you know, he's not, you know, he's getting towards, you know, the back part of his career. You know, he's what I see is a guy that he's able and willing to adapt his role, and you can't show that in any greater way than, you know, what happened with the C earlier this year and how that transition, was made from him to Maddie and how JT handled all of that. So, as you get longer in your career, you have to find ways to adapt and play different roles. And that's going to be up to, whether John Tavares wants to do that and wants to be in Toronto in possibly, a little bit of a shifting role. Mitch, for me, I'm just a believer in, this guy's one of the best players in the league. And some of the things that he does on a daily basis for me are they're special. So when we start talking about, and I'm not talking about the Leafs or Mitch necessarily in particular, when you start talking about, you've got one of the best players in the league, one of the most dynamic, guy that does a lot of things. I think you have to be very careful in allowing that player to leave your organization, because a lot of times you're going to spend the next 10 years or longer trying to find somebody that's, able to bring those abilities. So I love Mitch. There's a lot more to him behind the scenes than people might know, and not really my place to talk about it, but he's a pretty good team guy that, that brings things together. And again, you go through all the ups and downs that this group has gone through. It's hard to win. They're expected to win this year, and I'm sure they expect themselves to do that. The reality is only one team at the end of the year is going to walk away winning the last game. So I'd hate to have it all put on what the result of the playoffs is, but obviously that's going to have an impact. Yeah, absolutely, Rosie.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. I mean, imagine being in that footing, and you have been, where it's like the regular season really doesn't matter. It's all about like those 7 games in round 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. We'll leave on a lighter note. During the pandemic, I had a chance to be the Leafs radio host in the Blueprint and the Amazon series. Joe Thornton, like, people forget Joe Thornton was a Toronto Maple Leaf. What was it like to have Joey T in the room?
You know what? I just had a chance to spend some time with him over at the Spengler Cup. And I mean, just awesome. Like, from the second, back in Toronto, from the second that Jumbo would walk in the facility, in the practice facility in the morning, coaches were all in there early, but usually one of the first guys, that was in there every morning, because he just loved being at the rink. I mean, Jumbo, and when he walked in the rink, you knew it. You heard him, you felt it. Just that presence that he brought was awesome. And you know what? He's like that today. I mean, he's a guy that just loves being around the boys, loves being around the rink, and loves the competitiveness of the game. So pretty special individual, obviously Hall of Famer in terms of his career, but even more special human being and what he brings into the facility every day.
I heard he's an absolute beauty for multiple guys, and apparently he makes nicknames, like random nicknames for everybody. Is that true?
He comes up with a lot. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it just rolls out of him. Put it that way. It's all natural. He doesn't have to work at it. It's just how he is. And he's just, he's one of those guys everybody wants to be around. He just draws people in. And there's never a bad day when Jumbo's around.
Hack, this has been a lot of fun. It's so great catching up with you. And obviously you offer the unique insight of having been in the trenches with this team. Really, really appreciate your time, and we'll talk soon. Okay.
Anytime. Look forward to it. Thanks, and have a great day there.
Thanks,
You
Zach.
as well. Absolute beauty. Dave Hakstol, of course, spent a couple seasons as assistant, most recently with the Seattle Kraken. Just, it's always great to pick the brain of somebody who knows the league the way somebody of Hack would know, right? And obviously this Leafs team, and I think it's a cool perspective to know like what happens behind the scenes, how guys feel, the pressure that rampens up, and of course you would feel that way being a Maple Leaf as well, right?
Yeah, it is. I always want to ask guys that have been part of the Leafs, what they thought was different. And you oftentimes get the same responses, but I'm waiting for someone to kind of put it into words that resonate with me, that say, yes, that's kind of it. And I don't know if those words exist or not, but it is. I really believe that it's different being a part of the Maple Leafs than it is being a part of the Colorado Avalanche. And that's no disrespect to the Avalanche. They've got cups, and they've got history, and they've got Hall of Famers, and they've got incredible talent. It's just different being in that city, in this country, hanging under that logo. Like I mentioned, you go to Calgary, and it's just, you can't get into the lower bowl on the Leafs end for warm up. Like, name another
You sound pissed.
team. It's just not even close, man. It's not
Yeah.
even close. And like I said, I try to pick the brains of people who have been part of it to see if they have any other descriptions of what that's like. But for the most part, it just is what it is, and it's nice to have these guys on with all the different perspectives like Hakstol.
And it makes me again think to like good things about this Leafs team, what it would feel like to win a Stanley Cup, man. What it would feel to go deep in the playoffs. Like I remember the Pat Quinn era. It's so cool and fun and interesting watching hockey when it's warm outside. You know what I'm saying? When
Oh,
it's
the
like
playoff.
it's t-shirt weather and you're like, I'm getting ramped up to watch a Leaf game tonight. Like they're far when that happens. We haven't really sniffed that lately.
I know it's like spring in Canada
Oh,
when
sick.
in the playoffs when everything's thawed and things are growing and the days are getting longer and longer, and it's like you can go watch a 7:30 game,
Yeah.
and then afterwards you still got daylight left. You're in the golf cart and the game is on your phone and you're watching, and your buddy's cart's got the same one you're talking about it as you go down the fairway. It's amazing, and it makes those memories and it gives you those vibes and those feelings. And like you said, the Maple Leafs haven't really been part of it too terribly much in the last couple of decades, unfortunately. But they're working their bags off to try to be a part of it and try to put the pieces in place. And this year is no exception. And again, when we talk to people and the people that come on this show and ourselves, I do think there's reason to believe this team is a little bit different. They're playing differently. They're winning differently. Their goaltending is, I mean, it's better than it. This is it. There's reason to be excited this year. There's a lot of reasons to say there's less holes in this team than there have been in the past, and I think they're still even doing work to shore up some of those holes. So we'll see. A quick 4-game snap, and fuck, if it doesn't go well, you're right back to square one. It is an incredible thing, that league, but it's why we do it.
Robert Smith says, okay, Rosehill. That's probably my rebuttal as well. We can make a compilation of you and I being like, this team is the guy. I remember the O'Reilly year. I'm like, Rosie, this team's different. I feel it. They're going far this year. Then they
I
just
know.
shit themselves.
I know you got the Luke Shen in the background to add some grit and some sand, and
that team was good, man. I'm telling you, they were good.
I know. It's I don't know. You want to start talking
But Florida
curses?
was a wagon that year. Like they just got steamrolled. I think they took so much out of them beating Tampa. They got nothing left for Florida, and the Panthers were just so tough,
I mean, you could take Habs fans and Oiler fans and they could laugh right in my face right now, but they
Yeah.
have not gotten very good luck running up against the likes of the Tampa Bay Lightning, of the Boston Bruins, and of the Florida Panthers, all in their bloody heydays,
I
which
know.
are in their division and first round matchup opponents more often than not. Yeah, they had their chances to get to make their hay and get their cookies, but man, there's a lot of times they were up against monsters, and not exactly easy, but it shouldn't be easy to get to the Stanley Cup. And
Exactly.
I don't know. Now they're one of the big boys, so it's time for them to do that to other teams. We will see. We'll see.
I'm staying positive with this Leafs team. I know you are as well, and getting ready for this Kraken game. It's time for the last call, brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION. That's NATION, all in uppercase, NATION today. What are you looking at tonight, betting-wise, Rosie?
I don't know. I'm getting kind of famous for just opening my app as you're reading the
that's
3-6
fine.
promo, but minus 165. I mean, I don't love
I
that.
like regulation or puck line. That's the way I'd bet that game.
Yeah, big time, which still you're minus money for the Leafs to do that. I don't know. I'd sprinkle out going to shot props. I think Austin will be shooting this
Yeah.
game. Go him 3+ shots. I think you'd probably get some value buried there. And with the way things are kind of heating up, and I could see Domi getting a goal, you could sprinkle that in. But I'd take the over 6. I think it's going to be a decently high scoring affair again.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling too. But I was hesitant because again, we think it's going to be Stolarz. Like that's the way I titled the podcast today. Stolarz returns ? But I think it's going to happen. You just never know with the Leafs. I don't know why you'd ramping this guy up and not play him. Like I wouldn't play him against Vancouver. So I think Seattle's a perfect game. Like Hudson and I talked about it yesterday, and it seems like he was trending that direction. So we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, and Hutz knows better than
Yeah.
anyone what goes into those decisions. And I mean, the players are not involved in the conversations that goalies are having with the coach or whoever's making the final decision on who's playing. There's only 2 guys, and you got to switch hit him and coming back from injury. I just don't know. All I know is the same thing that the fans know is like, oh, he's in tonight. So Hutz would know a lot better about that conversation, but it does seem like they want to get him one in before the break, or else, you could really, like, mentally, that's just a long grind to be like, geez, I haven't played in so long. Am I losing it? I'd love to feel the speed of a game. Just like, I think it's good to get one in. And like Hutz says, it makes sense to do it now over the last one in Vancouver.
Well, we're looking at December 12th is when he went down, and it's now February 6th. So it's like almost pretty much 2 months, right? And if you don't play him and then he comes back, like hypothetically, I think it's like the 22nd, I want to say, or the 18th, one of those days, they're playing Carolina on the return. Like, I think he's getting at least one of those games. It's Carolina, then Chicago in the back-to-back. Like, that's, yeah, it is February 22nd they come back against Carolina. So you're looking at like, man, that's a long, I have to get him in either Vancouver or Seattle here.
It's like 9-10 weeks, man. You can't be on the shelf that long. That's like a summertime. That's too long.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And I don't know what to expect, man. A goaltender coming. I mean, he came out of the gates hot this season, no doubt about it, which, every goalie, every player's got to go through an off season and then start. You get training camp, you get preseason, but I'm not sure what he's going to look like. And I imagine there'll be a little bit of cobwebs and a little bit of kinks, but that's to be expected. So interesting to see. I would definitely keep our eyes on who is in the pipes for the Leafs tonight. No question.
All right, great stuff. More headed on tomorrow's show. First and foremost, thank you to everybody in the chat. You guys are great at the Leafs Nation 401. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Again, thank you to Dave Hakstol for dropping by. And we got other big guests coming up tomorrow. Peter Mansbridge, longtime broadcaster in this country, an absolute legend, big Leafs fan. If you guys recall, we had him on last year. He's hopping on the show tomorrow, Rosie.
Feels like 2 years ago. Was it not our first season?
I don't know. I don't remember. I think it was last year.
Yeah, nonetheless, he's a interesting, cool guy. His voice is maybe not so much for the younger people. I don't know, interesting to see, but his voice was the voice of a nation for a long time, and lifelong hockey fan. So it'll be interesting to pick his brain a little bit too, and see if his mind has changed or his attitude towards this season is brighter than in the past. He's interesting guy to talk to. So looking forward to it.
Well said. Full recap of Leafs Kraken coming up on Friday. Peter Mansbridge has mentioned, and also we'll tee up the Leafs and the Vancouver Canucks. And here come the Coats. I can feel it already. Boo. Why is this game starting at 7 Eastern? As mentioned the other day, because it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. Many thanks to producer Andy. For Jay Rosehill, I'm Nick Alberga. We'll talk on Friday. Take care. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long-form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.